For our chiefs.
Here, I think we're live.
Very good. Thank you, Desiree. Welcome, everyone. This is the Ways and Means Committee, 6 o'clock Tuesday, August 18th. Virtual meeting due to COVID-19 pandemic. All members are present. First item of agenda is call to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have duly been notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Second item is approval of previous meetings minutes. Can we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any changes, edits, comments? All those in favor, can we just do a raise hand on this, Desiree or Nicole? All those in favor of approving minutes?
Very good. Thank you. All in favor?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
should we call roll call?
We sure can.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye. Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Hobson,
Here.
Councilmember Streetman,
Here.
Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Moy,
Here.
Mayor Carroll,
Yeah.
Chair Pounds.
Here.
Did I forget Councilmember Ward?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next item is citizens' comments. We have two. Nicole, if you don't mind reading those into the record, that would be great. Please.
Absolutely. The first one is from James Smiley, 1644th Avenue. Every year, year after year, usually in August, City Council rubber stamps approval of the CARTA budget. This happens despite the fact that we get absolutely nothing in return for the approximately $275,000 we contribute to the CARTA budget each year. There are 0 CARTA bus routes which deliver and pick up passengers on the Isle of Palms. Promises are often made by CARTA, but rarely, if ever, kept. For example, last year in the August Ways and Means Committee, Administrator Fregoso reported that a CARTA Vanpool project was still in the works and the plan was to be implemented this fiscal year. She also shared that the plan for a park and ride system for citizens is still part of CARTA's long-term plan. See the minutes of the Ways and Means Committee meeting for August 20th, 2019. In the August 2019 City Council meeting, a representative from CARTA came before Council to seek approval of the CARTA budget. She spoke of CARTA's most recent accomplishments in the Charleston area and stated that CARTA continued to work toward a vanpool service to transport workers from Mount Pleasant to the Isle of Palms. After her presentation, Council voted unanimously to approve CARTA's budget as presented. This was not an exceptional vote. City Council has been unanimously approving the CARTA budget each year for at least the last 10 years. In the meantime, population growth in Mount Pleasant has swelled to over 90,000. Their growth is unbridled and is growing each year by leaps and bounds. Yet the Isle of Palms is expected to somehow provide parking for beach access to visitors from our neighboring community and beyond, despite the fact that we are a residential community with a finite number of visitor parking spaces. We desperately need help. CARTA could provide help by providing an hourly shuttle service, park and ride, to and from Mount Pleasant on the weekends when pressure on available parking is greatest. While this would not completely solve our visitor parking problem, it could help, for certainly every car which does not come onto the island is one less car looking for a place to park. As a guide to what is presently planned for CARTA in the East Cooper area, please read the recently completed public transit study which CARTA did for Mount Pleasant, and note that it does not include any mention of public transit from Mount Pleasant to the Isle of Palms. And that statement's followed by a lengthy URL to the study. It is time to expect something from CARTA in return for our annual $275,000 contribution to the CARTA budget. It is time for us to be recognized as an entity in the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments. It is time for the Isle of Palms, Sullivan's Island, and Mount Pleasant governments to sit down and solve the logistics of a park and ride system to shuttle weekend beachgoers from Mount Pleasant to the islands and back to alleviate at least some of the parking and traffic problem we experience. I ask that you please do not rubber stamp approval of the CARTA budget again this year. Expect a quid pro quo for our dollars. Demand CARTA's attention to our transit problems. We have been the orphaned stepchildren for way too long. Second comment is from Celeste O'Brien of Mount Pleasant. Taxpayers, parentheses, not just IOP residents, paid millions of dollars to renourish those beaches. The parking is DOT right of way. There are beach access points all along Palm Boulevard. They are essentially now useless. I have been going to IOP since I was a child. Never did we have to worry about our cars getting ticketed by parking on the roadside and using the beach access to our beaches. This is outrageous, and IOP needs to remember the beaches and ability to access them freely belongs to all of us in Charleston County and South Carolina. Do not vote to require any changes to the parking at IOP. Thus ends your public comments.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And for those that sent us notes, appreciate that. Next item in your packets, financial statements. Debbie, you want to take this, please? We have June and July in your package, so assuming we'll do June first. So Debbie, thank you. Debbie, you're on mute.
Still on mute.
Still on mute. There you go. Oh,
She's not muted, but we can't hear her, right?
correct.
Correct.
Debbie, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Do you want to come to my office? Okay, she's coming in.
Desiree, you can just swag that. Is that the correct term?
Ron, you want to go ahead and put up June financial statements while she's transitioning? Or is that Desiree's hosting this meeting, I guess, isn't she? Thank you.
Yeah.
You can go get them off there. Okay, folks, so I wanted to just, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to update you on the June 30 results. All the transactions, for the most part, are in, with the exception of a 200,000-ish payment from, thanks, Desiree, the MASC for insurance license fees, and about 75,000 still to come from local option sales tax. So 275 more to come on the revenue side. As far as I know, all the expenditures are in, but there is a chance that we could get some late invoices, or there could be some adjustments that would affect the expenditure side of things. What I wanted to point out, first of all, was that in total, the city took in $17 million and spent roughly $16 million. So if you just look at revenues in versus expenditures out, we were about $1 million ahead. But when you compare it to the budget, there are differences that we need to talk about. On the revenue side, once you take into account the expenditures, I think, to come that we will still collect, you're at $1.5 million below where we thought we would be on the revenue side. Fully $1 million of that is COVID related in the tourism fund. On the expenditure side, we're almost $6 million under. 2 million of that is public safety building spending that will happen next year. Another 2 million of that is other capital outlay items like $500,000 worth of targeted drainage projects, $600,000 for the refurbishment of the fire truck, and there are some others. So that's another $2 million-ish. We're saving about $1 million in the general fund, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then that remains about another $1 million of true savings to budget in various places within all the city's funds. I do want to touch on the general fund because y'all have an agenda item to talk about related to general fund revenues in excess of expenses for FY20. On the revenue side, currently we're $367,000 behind the budget. $275,000 of that I estimate will still come in. So you're a little less than $100,000 under on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we've got some savings. Ron, can you move no, go back to the first page. Okay. So of the $973,000 we're saving on the expenditure side of the general fund, almost $500,000 of that is salary and fringe related. And right off the top of my head, there's a position eliminated in the general government department, significantly delayed hiring in the police department and public works, savings in part-time salaries in the rec department related to closings due to COVID, and then the 2.5% merit adjustment that was eliminated for January of 2020. Another big piece of savings in the general fund expenditure side is, and it's not really savings because all these things are rebudgeted, but the bond attorney, the financial advisor, grant writing, and strategic planning, all of which have been rebudgeted in FY21. Any questions on the 2020 results?
Nope.
So we have about $800,000, I think, once the additional revenues are received. Positive net result in the general fund. And later on the agenda, there's an item for City Council to give us some direction as to where those funds should be distributed for the financial statements as of June 30. That's not to say that the money couldn't be then, on July 1st or September 1st reallocated. But we usually like to do that distribution as the kind of the last journal entry of the year before we finalize for the bound financial statements. In the past, city councils have distributed that money between the Disaster Recovery Fund, the Capital Projects Fund, and the General Fund. Okay, so Ron, I think we can flip on to the July results. I think I covered all those notes pretty much. Not a whole lot to talk about in July. Most of the revenues or collections we received in July relate to June, so they've been accrued in June. We do have some funds associated with rental licenses. This is renewal time for rental licenses and parking lots and parking meters. So $206,000 was collected in July for parking. On the expense side, you'll see that note, the year-to-date general fund expense is $936,000, which is high compared to the prior year, but that's because it just so happens that July 2020 includes 3 payrolls, whereas usually a month only includes 2. There are 2 months a year where we have 3 bi-weekly payrolls. So that's just a timing difference. Next page, Ron, we'll talk briefly about the cash position. So there's about $20 million in cash. Of this total, approximately $7.5 million is restricted. $1.4 million is at BB&T, and about $18.5 million is at the LGIP at an interest rate of about 0.5%. Okay, next page. Just wanted to, all the tourism revenues for FY20 have been collected. You can see that when all was said and done on the municipal accommodations fee, and this is true for the beach preservation fee as well, we ended the year 17% below FY18. And that is certainly all COVID related. The budget for FY21 assumes even further losses, a 25% reduction over the full year. So we will continue to monitor. Next page is the state accommodations tax we received the fourth quarter. You can see the June quarter was $242,000 versus $445,000 in the prior year. So you can certainly see the COVID impacts there. State accommodations tax, and this is the tourism related portion only, is only 16% behind FY19. The county accommodations tax pass-through, y'all will recall that the county has advised us they will not make the second payment that we were expecting, and we should not expect any revenues from them in FY21. So a 27% reduction from FY19. And one more, hospitality tax. You can see for July, we collected almost $67,000 compared to $88,000 for July last year. So we continue to see some COVID impacts in the hospitality tax revenue stream, 24% below FY19. Any questions on the tourism schedules?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just for our viewers' point of view, Charleston County, it's not just Isle of Palms, but it's across Charleston County that the revenues are not being given out. Again, they're having the same problem that we're having.
Good point. Thank you, Mayor. And Debbie, at this point, we're holding firm with our forecast and a 25% reduction for the rest of the year.
Yes. As of right now, the forecast for FY21 is we should change what we budgeted. Okay, Ron, I think the project worksheets are next. Okay, public safety building repair. Next page, we've had some large expenditures, $500,000 in June and July for pay applications. But we are still expecting this project to end within the budget, which is great. And ahead of schedule, Desiree is whispering to me. I think everybody's very happy with the way this project is going. Drainage phase 3, on the second page, you can see the June and July expenditures associated with Thomas and Hutton's work. No construction has begun on either the targeted projects that I mentioned earlier or the drainage outfalls. Well, you're expecting that to commence in FY21. Next page. This is a new schedule to get us going on the Marina dock repair or replacement. You can see the contracts and change orders all involve ATM contracts. And the project expenditures are all spending or payments for ATM invoices. That is all I have, unless anybody has any more questions.
Questions for Debbie before we move on? Nope, Debbie, as always, thank you. Let's move on to the next item. We don't have any old business, and to Debbie's comment, the first item under new business is consideration of distribution of the fiscal year 20 positive net result. As Debbie just ran through, we have, oh, go ahead, Jimmy, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, this time I'd like to make a motion about the distribution of the positive net result.
Do it.
And my motion would be, as Debbie mentioned, we're going to have a final adjusting journal entry. I talked with her today, and I'm sure you talked with her about it, that we feel like it might come in a little bit higher than it is. Don't know. But percentage wise, I'm proposing transferring 65% or approximately 520,000 to capital projects, 25% or approximately 200,000 stay in the general fund, and then 10% or 80,000 transferred to disaster recovery.
Okay. Got a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All right, let's have any discussion or questions. Yep, Randy.
I just have a question of Councilman Ward. That sounds roughly as we've done in the past, moving percentages to disaster recovery as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty heavy on capital projects because we have so much to do, so much coming up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would make the motion to be a little bit heavier with general, but I think this is prudent at this time. And actually, these are Debbie's numbers, and I just concurred with her.
Okay. No, and it's consistent for those that haven't done this last couple of years. It's fairly consistent with what we've done the last couple of years.
Yeah, and Randy, you know, my only, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Oh, I just, the disaster fund, I know, is supposed to cover us temporarily if we have a large disaster, especially a hurricane. But with the anticipation that FEMA funds would then come in and we would be reimbursed. I'm curious to know, at the levels that we're at right now, do we really feel like we need that much money in the disaster recovery fund if we up it by $80,000, or if perhaps that $80,000 could serve us better, you know, being available to offset pandemic situation.
Well,
Sorry, Susan, go ahead. Yeah, Jimmy Ward, you want to comment?
Well, we can always pull it out of disaster recovery at any time if we need to redirect it. This is the balance, I do believe, is around 2.5 million now.
About 2.7.
And what is it, Philip?
About 2.7, Jimmy.
2.7, thank you. And so, yeah, we do get reimbursed eventually for a lot of these expenses by FEMA, but it's kind of a safety net for our citizens, knowing that, you know, we've got a cushion that will get us through hopefully most anything when if we so need it. But we can always vote to pull it out if we have to. But you said pandemic, that's a disaster.
That's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
And I think it is worth noting, though, especially for the public, that we also have fund balances that can provide us cushion in disaster times. So really, this disaster fund has a more specific purpose of being a transitional fund. So, you know, that's why I feel like, I think there might be some misunderstanding if or hesitancy to reach back and pull out of the disaster fund, you know, for things that maybe don't look as quite like a disaster. Or, I mean, I guess you are correct. Pandemic should qualify in most people's minds, but I just wonder if it would be better to have that $80,000 on hand should we need it for other things without having to reach back for it.
Yeah, and Debbie, we had a conversation. I mean, I generally agree with Jimmy Ward's commentary and split. I guess, if you look at capital projects, the projected fund balance at the end of our current fiscal year, I mean, we're going from 5.3 million down to 1.5, and we know that, and we know what's happening and why all that's going on. I mean, is there any, and I know we talked about leaving some more money in the general fund as well, but that one stays pretty constant and goes up as far as a projected balance through the end of 21. I mean, you comfortable with splits? I know Jimmy said these are your numbers, and we had talked about this as well, but I just want to make sure no change in thinking, and we're good with where they're going to wind up. And I know we can pull them when we need to, but you're good with recommendation and a motion on the floor.
Yes, I am.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir, Mayor.
I look at our public safety building and it costs 6.2 million. And we had a lawsuit which we netted about 1.2 million, and it's costing us 5 million. And we're able to do that without borrowing that money. So I think our city staff has done an incredible job in putting monies aside. And I think we're right on the direction we need to be going. And I hope our residents understand that, we didn't have to go out and do that. We had the money to do it.
Any other comments or questions? Nicole, you want to do a roll call vote on that motion, please?
Sure. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
I see that hand.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Very good. Debbie, Desiree, good work as usual. Ron, everybody, this has just been, it might have been lost in Debbie's comments, but we wound up with $800,000 positive when we were forecasting $100,000 negative. I mean, it was just a shot in the dark. I mean, you remember all our workshop conversations of just trying to get to some type of assumption and best case, worst case scenario. And thank goodness we wound up on the good side of this one so far. So thank you guys very much for that. Our next new business item, I asked to have this one on. It's just a discussion item, not a vote, of the City of Isle of Palm sources of revenue. And I guess one of the advantages of creating the agenda is you get to carve out yourself some time if you want it sometimes. But there has been so much noise and so much commentary about who pays for what and where our revenue comes from and how it gets into the city. I wanted at least City Council and whoever's watching tonight, and Ron's got a few slides. This is not in your packet actually, but Ron's got a couple of slides we're going to run through. I just wanted to make sure at least City Council and the folks watching tonight have a factual basis on where IOP revenue comes from, and just some general commentary that I want to make sure, it's just fact-based. And so Ron, if you'll go to the next slide. So I've taken our fiscal year 21 numbers, and you've seen a lot of these numbers on different slides and in different meetings and in different ways, but I've tried to put between this slide and two more that we're going to have, I've tried to put it all in one spot again, just so we can have a good factual basis for which we're all at least launching off with and having conversations with residents and non-residents and business owners and whomever. So, just real quick, our property taxes make up about 1/3 of our revenue, tourism about 25%, business license permits, fees about 22%, parking 8%, and you can see the rest. Lost is local option sales tax. Marina, other revenue is anything from rec center revenue to grants, interest income, court fees, that kind of a number. So hang on, Ron, 1 second. So what you're not seeing here, is a slice for state. You're not seeing a slice for county. That's in some of the other revenue. So Ron, go ahead and head to the next one if you don't mind. So, again, just trying to make sure we're grounded. Our budget this year roughly is about 15.5 million if you back out the bond proceeds that we have coming this year with some of the drainage work. And if you look back over the last 5 years, state and federal revenue, absent of beach renourishment, has been about 2% and 1% of our budget respectively. So pretty small slices. our expenses to manage our beach parking, beach cleanup, and public restrooms is about $500,000 annually, rough numbers. We've talked about this a little bit. Mayor referenced that this is going on all over the county, not just IOP centric. You know, the county ATAX money that's generated here at IOP and historically passed through to us is about $500,000, which when you look at the first bullet, that's a pretty sizable number based on our revenue. You know, we can't continue to grow our area. We're fixed, and you know, our ways to increase revenue to offset our increasing cost and providing of services is pretty limited. And think about the actions of this council and previous councils over the last few years. Controllable revenue sources, rental license, business license, parking fines, parking fees. You know, we've increased those pretty dramatically to put some money in the coffers and help us support all of the expenses that go on with our beach management plan. The last bullet, the right-of-way paid parking, which is an agenda item here in just a minute, could generate about $500,000 annually to help offset expenses associated with our parking plan and improvements to the right-of-way road shoulders. Next slide, Ron. So this is the last slide real quick. You know, IOP, and this is not news to anybody on this call, I'm guessing, but IOP revenue from county or state doesn't increase as our tri-county area experiences double-digit growth. During season, police and fire calls increase 51% and 75% respectively. So significant, you know, cost to the IOP. We have to plan, budget, save, scrimp everything to undertake significant capital expenditures and infrastructure projects. For example, drainage, as we've saved up over the last few years and have a project going, getting ready to kick off. Sewer infrastructure to eliminate a third of the island that's still on septic tanks, while at the same time maintaining our beach parking plan, providing public safety personnel and additional services for a significant volume of visitors. You know, our public safety personnel is staffed not just for our full-time residents, but for full-time residents plus the influx of visitors that we have during the season. You know, we do receive state and federal funds, just in full interest of full disclosure, for beach renourishment. 2018, we received $3.9 million from the state, a little bit over $3 million from Fed. However, 45% of the total cost of the last project was covered by Wild Dunes residents and the resort. And as most of you know and has been bantered about, we provide 8 times the required number of parking spaces and beach access pass that the state requires. So again, a lot of this is not new information for you. I just wanted to make sure we had some fact-based conversation or discussion. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or comments around that. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for putting that together. I think that's very useful for everybody to see where our money comes from and where the money is spent. So thank you very much for putting that together.
Or more importantly, where it doesn't come from, Mayor. Randy?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I commented earlier that Post and Courier reported this week that Mount Pleasant would not receive $133,000 in tax money. And when you look respectively at our budgets and what we're not getting as an incredibly small community, that percentage, which is really over $600,000 that we had planned for, that we're, you know, at this point not getting, is such a huge percentage of our total budget. I think everyone on this call needs to understand we have to make amends for that. Yeah, and it's not as simple as it just went away. We have to find ways to compensate for the fact that we are not getting county money. And that's a pretty tremendous hit to a small budget.
John, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one, I guess I'll try not to restate entirely what you presented, and thank you for putting that together. But for me, as I look through those things, the most impactful thing to me is the big projects, the big capital expenditure and infrastructure projects that we have looming. And I know it's been a topic of discussion at every budget meeting and beyond, pretty much at every Ways and Means meeting, of how are we going to bolster the infrastructure of Isle of Palms, particularly as it relates to sewer, drainage, and our power lines. Not to mention things that we might have to do as there might be rising sea level and other impacts that we're seeing that our infrastructure is not designed or capable of handling at this time. So we've got major expenses. We have major infrastructure needs that, you know, for years, I think we've ignored a little bit because we've placed the emphasis of our budget towards operating expenses and making sure that the city runs efficiently. But we've done so at the expense of some deferring of things that we need to really prioritize. And so I think being very forward-looking and this council being very forward-looking and thinking about how do we set ourselves up for the future in a way that we're, from an operating standpoint, we can operate year to year smoothly, but also save and put away and plan for and anticipate challenges in the infrastructure and capital expenditures that we're going to have to take on.
Thanks, John. Jimmy Ward.
Yes, sir. Would you mind showing the, I think it's called the factoid sheet?
Yeah.
Said where
I
the,
made that word
that's-
up, Jimmy. Come on.
yeah, that's a pretty
Yeah.
good word. I like that. But I'd be interested in seeing that slide one more time. There was, wasn't that the one with the percentages on it from what we got from Charleston County and surrounding areas?
This one, Jimmy.
Maybe, no, it's the one before.
Okay. Back up
Yeah.
one line if you don't mind. This one, Jimmy.
Yeah, the second bullet point there.
Yes.
Over past 5 years, state and federal revenue, absent beach renourishment has been 2% and 1% respectively.
Yeah, there were some grants, state and federal grants. I don't have a year that they actually hit. It's somewhere between fiscal 2016 and fiscal 20, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Of those numbers that came in from those particular entities. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Right, but then on the beach renourishment, there's about 3 and 3 million, I believe he said.
Ron,
and then Wild Dunes put in a huge chunk.
Yeah, it was 3.9, 3 million for the Fed, and Wild Dunes was about 5.4 million roughly.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, thank you, Jimmy, for the question. Other questions, thoughts? If not, we'll move on. Next item is, thank you for allowing me a few minutes there to do that. I appreciate that. Not that you really had a vote in it, but good at, I guess, at some point. But next is consideration of the proposed fiscal 21 CARTA budget. Desiree, would you like to introduce our speaker that we have with us tonight?
Of course. With us, we have Andrea Kozlowski. I'm hoping I pronounced that right.
Very good. Perfect.
I sympathize with my last name. So, and she is the Deputy Director of Operations and Support for the COG, and she will make a brief presentation on the proposed FY21 budget for CARTA and be available to answer any questions that the group may have. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me and for considering the proposed 2021 CARTA budget. The agenda packet should have included a memorandum with detailed information on an explanation of the line item changes for this year's upcoming budget. So I won't go into a whole lot of detail. I'm sure you had time to read that and look through it. I will just note a few things that aren't included on there. Our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have installed sneeze guards on all of our vehicles. In addition, we have distributed masks on every vehicle because all the riders are required to wear a mask as they get on. Hand sanitizer is available as well. And the vehicles are deep cleaned every time they come back to at the end of the evening. So we feel our response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been well received by the public. People appreciate the fact that we're actually distributing the masks and not just requiring them to wear them without providing them for them. So that's been a positive for us. It has been an expensive endeavor. So it has, impacted the budget a little bit, but nothing that we cannot recover from. In addition, I just wanted to update you on the status of the park and ride for the hospitality workers. We have finally gotten through our federal and state funding partner process. One of the first steps was actually getting in what's called the State Transportation Improvement Program. And that is the state's way of saying that the project is now in the process and we can start moving forward with it. So We are working to get approval from FTA to move forward with the actual procurement of the vehicles. Our grants manager is working with FTA to develop a timeline that we can expect to reasonably have the vans in place. The FTA review and public comment period is typically 8 weeks. So procurement time for those vehicles is going to vary. We're moving forward now and not waiting with identifying the types of vans that would be appropriate for this project, and developing the procurement documents so that we can run forward with the procurement as soon as we are allowed to. The procurement process could be as short as 2 months or as long as 4. So we're estimating that we would have the vans in place in October and December. So we'd probably be looking at an early 2021 implementation. We are currently working, still trying to locate a park and ride facility in the town of Mount Pleasant. We are still working with the old vacant bylaw that's on the Isle of Palms connector. They were hesitant about allowing us to use that spot. They had a lease holder that was interested in that and wasn't willing to work with us. We have recently heard from them that that may have changed a little bit. So we're crossing our fingers that we can work with the new leaseholder to acquire some spaces. We have worked with several other like Seacoast, and it's just not going to work because they can't guarantee that we can have spots every day of the week. So we need somewhere that we know we have secure parking that's safe and that we're going to be able to use 7 days a week or as many days as we need it. So I'm happy to report that the project's moving forward. We're open to any suggestions that anyone has of available parking in Mount Pleasant. And we're also working with the town center as well. Now that they have their new parking deck, we're hopeful that they can carve out some spaces for us as well. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions?
John Moy, I think I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here for the presentation, Ms. Kozlowski. Did I say that right?
That's right.
Thank you. I think I saw your name in the meeting early, so I'm gonna assume that you heard the citizen comments. But before were you listening?
I did.
Did
Yes.
you hear those comments?
Yes, sir.
How would you respond to those?
We know that the Vanpool project has been a long time coming, and unfortunately, sometimes these things with funding and state funding partners, it just takes a long time to get them in place. We are happy to know that we are moving forward with the project. We will not let the fact that we still don't have a parking lot to park in stop us with the procurement piece of it. We feel pretty confident we'll be able to find somewhere or some business that will step up and allow us to use the parking. We are willing to work with the city on shuttles or whatever the case may be for beachgoers. If the city feels that that is something they would like to discuss, we're more than happy to discuss that.
Mayor, I think you were next up.
Mr. Moore beat me to the question, and I don't need to.
All right, Jimmy Ward.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I may, is Debbie still here?
She is.
If I could ask her if she wouldn't mind explaining the mechanism of how the TST money, the 1% money works, and how it relates to us and to county council, and where the decision ultimately lies. As we discussed earlier today, Debbie, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. Brief explanation is pretty simple.
Debbie still got microphone issues. Desiree?
Yeah, Debbie, do you want to come over here?
Okay, so I think what Jimmy wants me to explain is the $275,000 contribution to CARTA that was mentioned earlier. And that is a rough guesstimate based on, I think the year was 2019. the total economic activity on the Isle of Palms per the state Department of Revenue report that we get annually. And then you take 1% of that, because the transportation sales tax is 1%. And then you do some, look at what percentage of the total transportation sales tax was going to CARTA, and I believe that was 16%. And you do the multiplication, you get to 275. So that is money, that was a guesstimate of the money going to CARTA that was generated by sales on the Isle of Palms. But that was not money that the city ever controlled. That money is, that tax was imposed by the county. It was collected by the state, actually. And then it's controlled by county council.
Well, and via referendum, right, Debbie?
Yes, actually it was done via referendum, county referendum. So it's money generated on Isle of Palm sales, but it is not money that city council can control.
There's no line item in the budget revenue, CARTA, and in the no, it never has been.
All right. John Moy.
Yeah, I guess to Councilman Ward's comments and questions. What is then the role of this council with regard to this budget and these funds?
So as part of our enabling act from the state of South Carolina, any municipality that could receive services must review our budget. I won't say approve it. We hope that they all do, and they all have so far. Review the budget, make sure that they don't have any issues with it, and take a vote on it. That's part of our enabling act that CARTA was formed under.
Susan Smith.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. We appreciate you offering the explanation and the information. I'm not sure if it was clear to people outside of council that what you're talking about happening is a kind of a ride share that would be geared towards employees on the island, where we have also heard a lot of interest, especially in recent months, for creating, as you mentioned, a shuttle that is more geared towards beachgoers. And so we've actually been talking about that off and on for a while. And I think that, personally, I feel an interest. I hope that others feel an interest in exploring and looking at some innovative ways that we can make that happen. If you can give us some feedback on how we pursue that.
Sure. Yeah. So I apologize. I probably jumped ahead thinking everybody knew what I was talking about with the Vanpool program. But the Vanpool program was something initiated actually by Mr. Ward. He asked us to take a look at it and see, to try to get the employees that work on the Isle of Palms and don't reside there a way to get to the Isle of Palms without taking up the parking spaces that are so needed out there. So we worked with all of the restaurants and hospitality businesses out there and came up with a determination of who would have interest and who wouldn't. We feel like we have a very good interest, especially with Wild Dunes. They're very interested in working with us to get their employees out there and free up some of their parking as well. So that's the Vanpool program that I was talking about that will hopefully kick off towards the end of the year, beginning of next year. The shuttle to the beach, we haven't really explored much about it just yet. Wanted to gauge city council and see if that's something that was of interest. I know you have a lot of parking issues out there. We would be happy to discuss it with Desiree and the mayor and see how we can move forward and make that work.
Randy.
I appreciate that the money's not coming for Isle of Palms. The problem I'm having is, this is a long conversation around where is the parking facility across the bridge. to enable a plan. So it feels a lot like fielding a baseball team without a place to play. And, you know, it's been a long time conversation, and I don't want it to sound like, you know, a protest vote not to do this. I think getting something together with the other communities for transport here, be it for businesses or beachgoers or whatever. But when we approve these budgets, which has been going on for years and years, and I look back and I go, so where's the value to the Isle of Palms? Not our money, but approving a budget and literally no delivered value. When do we, you know, put pressure back in the other direction and say, look, work with us, right? I think everybody sitting on this council wants to work with surrounding communities on all the transport issues to get people to and from the Isle of Palms. But I got to tell you personally, I don't feel like we have a plan. This is literally the same conversation we had last year. In deference to Councilmember Ward, you know, a lot of these meetings that we had, there were always a timing issue. You know, we tried to do something at council, but it was the next meeting, and it's no fault of Councilmember Ward's. We just got out of sync almost from the get-go on trying to get this program moving forward on the Vanpool. And I got to say personally, I don't have a lot of confidence when we say we're still working to find a place, whether it's Labilo or whether it's anywhere else. You know, it seems to me that it's time for a definitive plan, and we make definitive decisions and start addressing real problems. And I apologize for that. I'm not trying to be critical of your efforts, but this feels stalled to me for a pretty significant period of time.
We did hit a lot of snags with our funding partners. As you can imagine, working through procurement with FTA and SCDOT can sometimes be challenging. And I apologize that it's taken so long. I did not want to have to come back here tonight and tell you one more time that it is not in place, but I am feeling confident that we are moving forward with the project. DOT is on board with it. They had a lot of staffing changeovers that just didn't understand how the project would work. We've gotten everybody up to speed. We've gotten the first step in the process done. I feel confident that we can work with a business owner in Mount Pleasant that will allow us to use some parking. We're not talking about, you know, hundreds of parking spots. I feel confident in the conversations that we've had with Town Center and with Bilo, with the new lease holder, that hopefully we can work something out. Even if it's several different locations and we have 20 spots per location, it's always something that we can, you know, target and make sure workers that are working at Wild Dunes park here, workers who are working at another business park at a different location, and then either leave that van there overnight or take it home with them. So it is a top priority for us. I will not be back here next year telling you that this project is not moving, is not in place. Because that is something that is, it's a top priority for us. It really is.
Rusty, you had a question?
Yes, and a comment just real quickly here. So, Ms. Kozlowski, what's the real holdup with the new leaseholder for the old Bilo or Town Center, that area there? What kind of holdup has that been in negotiations with them? Because that building's been empty for a while now.
It has been empty for a while now. The first prospective leaseholder didn't want to give up the parking. They didn't think that they had enough parking for the use of the property the way that it was. So they weren't willing to even discuss it. Town Center, you know, they built the parking deck, but they still have a shortage of parking. We know that they do some boat shows in one section near the Bed Bath & Beyond. So they're able to at times do events there. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to negotiate some of those spots. And the new leaseholder at Bilo is very new. So we're working with them to determine what the use of the property will be. And if we could carve out, even if it's 10 to 15 spaces of that property, we will take what we can get.
And pretty soon you're going to have some empty spots there where Greenwise is.
Exactly. That was something we discussed today, actually, was that Greenwise is, and we don't know if there's a new buyer for that property just yet or not. So that is definitely something that we are pursuing.
Okay. Well, at the risk of sounding a little bit redundant here, I'm with what some of the other things that council has said here so far tonight. I think that number one, Dr. Smiley, one of our residents here, put together a very factual public comment for us tonight. It opened my eyes to a couple of things. And what really strikes me is that on Isle of Palm City Council, and I'm new on council, but for the last 10 years or so, we've unanimously approved the Carter budget for the last decade. And quite honestly, we have a lot of other communities are getting services and we're really not getting anything yet. So it's really, in my mind, time for us to really move forward, get some things going so that we can have some use of those services also. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, and then Susan, I'll come back to you. Jimmy, you're on.
Andrew, thank you, number one, for being brave enough to face this council. But, you know, we hear constantly about parking. There's 3 public beaches serving the greater Charleston area. There's been unbridled growth across the Tri-County, and we're getting beat up pretty heavily, all 3 beaches. And I think all the communities around here all need to chip in and think about places to help have a parking place for a shuttle for beachgoers, not just our employees, but a shuttle ongoing every summer for the Tri-County area coming in, but you're just representing Charleston area. You know, there's, I forgot how many people on some group about parking. You know, it's not fair for us to have to bear the brunt of all these cars when I think we're a spoiled society. Everybody wants to drive their own car to the beach. And I think it's time, it's like you go out west to Colorado and there are shuttles to take you from one resort to the next resort to go skiing. And I don't see why we can't have the same thing here. So if you would help us help you work with our surrounding communities and get them to get a buy-in to help us solve these traffic problems and parking problems. Thank you very much.
Susan.
The mayor just said exactly what I would have said, which was, you know, help us connect with the other communities, especially Mount Pleasant. But really, the whole Tri-County has people who want to come to the beach. So if we can really think big picture, that would probably be good as well. So I know people, council members in Mount Pleasant have expressed, you know, the same sentiment that they would like to do something to help this situation when we've talked in the past. And so I feel that if we really get together, we can make something happen. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Susan. Any other questions, comments? Then, seeing none, can we have a motion to accept the proposed Carter budget in a second?
I'll make that motion to accept the Carter budget of $275,000, knowing that we're going forward this summer with our employee parking bans.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jimmy. Nicole, you want to do roll call?
Wait, one last comment, please.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry about that.
Well, thank the representative from Carter for being here. For the most part, for the past 3 years, every month I've gone up to North Charleston to attend these meetings. They run quite efficiently. Mike Seekes does a great job. I mean, we have 25, 30 people on the board. I don't know how many's on there, but a lot. And he gets us out of there in an hour. But every month, I'm just sitting down there like the redheaded stepchild, like, we're still here, you know, Isle of Palms. And it's been, I'm not fussing at you, but you know, I think we've been patient enough. And I think it's time not to, you know, say everything that everybody else has said. But it's really, I'm very encouraged, and I believe you, we're going to get things moving. So that's really good news. And as the mayor said, you have a tremendous courage coming out here. Because I tell you, I'm going up there to those meetings, it's, you know, it's pretty much 3 hours time I get back home from the time I leave, and we've been ignored. So hopefully things will be moving forward from here on.
Ryan.
One more. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And the way I look at this is, I mean, we're moving forward with the CARTA Vanpool system, but we're having a hard enough time finding 10 spots of parking in Mount Pleasant to shuttle these people across. So how are we going to find a way to create a beach shuttle system from neighboring communities? And that's where CARTA needs to reach out to these other communities and find areas where this can happen. I mean, it's hard for us, the city, to reach out to these other communities to try to carve out spots where you can park. I mean, you're putting, I look through the budget, and you're paying for allocation of parking spots throughout Charleston County, but none of it is allocated towards parking towards a rideshare system to Out Palms. And that's one of the things we need to look at. And it's been passed on for really far too long. We've been trying to do this for years. And I mean, the whole van program is going to be a great asset to the city and to the employees that are going to utilize it. But really, I mean, we're overrun. We have too much traffic, and people are looking for alternative ways to get to the island. And we need help with that.
And I guess, Andrea, there's a comment in your, just to wrap up before we vote, there's a comment in your expenditure line item, to the mayor's comment and Ryan and really everybody, the theme of reaching out regionally. Now that the COG is, I guess, providing management services to CARTA, do I read that right?
Yes, sir.
So, Mayor, I'm hoping, leaning on the COG that has that broader view. And Ryan, to your comment, they will take that tri-county reach as opposed to just it being a CARTA initiative. So I hope that's a fact.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We've
sir.
actually had
ahead,
conversations with the town of Mount Pleasant, trying to work with their planners on finding vacant property or some property that they think we can, they could put us in touch with the property owner. So those conversations are ongoing. So we're hopeful that the town of Mount Pleasant can help assist us with that, as well as determining those parking locations.
Same here. Mayor?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman and Andrea. Really, I think a lot of people are watching this show tonight, and I think it's imperative. I've heard a lot of comments from elected officials in Mount Pleasant, and I think they all need to get on board. I mean, they've got the Memorial Park, waterfront park down there that was SCDOT property underneath the bridge. There's ways they can use some of that land to allow their residents to park there, to ride a bus to come to the beach. I think it's way past time that we start being smarter and getting people and using mass transit, especially to come to the beach, but have buses that can hold coolers or an umbrella and chairs. They have to be good buses designed, not just your normal everyday CARTA buses. Thank you.
Randy, one last comment, then we're going to vote.
Yeah, just it's a question. Given the money doesn't come from Isle of Palms, what is the impact of a no vote from council? I'm sitting here going, there's a message in here. I think that everybody is united around. Nobody is against having the vans for employee services, but a yes vote feels like business as usual to me. And I don't know the impact of a council no vote other than to send a message that this council and this city is serious about getting services from CARTA. So help me understand, and I'm not being presumptive, but if this council said no, what is the impact?
We do not need full buy-in from every one of our municipalities. Of course, we always like to have that, but you have every right to vote no for it, and we would note it, and it would be noted for the record.
And just one thing, and I'll write my second, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were here a year ago voting on this as well, on the idea that the van system would be in place by this year. So And it doesn't, like I said, it's still up.
Yeah, this could be our year, Ryan.
Maybe.
All right, let's vote it. Nicole,
All right. Councilmember Smith,
Nay.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Nay.
Councilmember Moy,
Nay.
Councilmember Bell,
Nay.
Councilmember Ward,
Nay.
Councilmember Popson,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Nay.
Mayor Carroll,
Reluctantly, nay.
Chair Pounds.
same as the mayor. Nay.
Okay, all opposed, the motion fails.
Thank you. Andrea, you've got your message.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Next item is item D, consideration of 3-year extension of ED's contract for island-wide drainage and ditch maintenance. You can see where it's coming from in the fiscal 21 budget. This is so let's have a motion and a second, then we can have some conversation if you don't mind.
Motion to
Motion
approve.
approved. Second.
Second, John, thank you. So this is an extension of an existing contract, and there's so many times we have the ability to extend this contract. Our intent, Desiree, not to speak for you, is to do this for 3 years, and then at the end of this 3-year extension, we'll RFP this service. But I know everybody's pleased with Edie. So Desiree, what else would you add to that conversation?
Yes, thank you. Just a little bit of history. The city did issue an RFP back in 2010. There were 2 bids received at that time. One from Edie's was ultimately the winning bid, if you will. And we've been incredibly pleased with the work that they have been doing for the city. You all may recall, some of you at least, that a couple of years ago, the city changed the rotation schedule from a 5-year rotation schedule to a 3-year rotation schedule. That is what we are proposing to continue to do through this next 3-year cycle. Just for your information, we have in the past reached out to other companies that do the vacuuming and cleaning of the pipes. And although there are other companies that do that work, to our knowledge and to Donnie's knowledge, and Robert is on the line and maybe he can speak to it a little bit more if it's necessary, but Edie's is pretty much the only contractor in town that provides the restructuring of ditches, the services to restructure ditches. It's something that's very costly and very time consuming, and even Charleston County contracts with Edie's for that work. As you all know, most of our ditches are open ditches, and we like it that way. Open ditches hold more water. They just require a little bit more maintenance. So in the packet, you have it with you, the second agreement for the extension of the 3-year cycle. The first exhibit includes the proposal, which spells out what they would be doing for the year. So every year, all ditches are cut of all vegetation, low-hanging limbs, and all debris is removed. That happens every year on every ditch. Then in that, you can see there the 66,000 and the same linear footage of ditches that would be maintained from vegetation and debris. Then every other in a 3-year cycle is the restructuring. So at least once every 3 years, every open ditch gets restructured. And also all boxes, in your packet, it also includes the schedule by which the storm box and pipe cleaning schedule, that's all closed pipes, but they need to be vacuumed. So we spent quite some time with Robert and Edie's and Donnie, just making sure that the scope of work was consistent with with our needs today. And of course, there's always, we always leave some flexibility out there, because if, let's say, there's a ditch that is scheduled to be restructured, but then there is another one that is in worse shape, then we always have the ability to kind of change course and change the scope a little bit. So we are recommending approval for this. It's included in the budget, and we can certainly bid it out before the next cycle. But I wouldn't be surprised if Edie's is the winning proposal, but I think it's just good practice that we'd be prepared and willing and able to do before we extend it again.
Thank you, Desiree. Questions, comments? Randy?
Just a comment, for what it's worth, I think they've done an excellent job.
I agree.
Do too.
Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hey, just for the record, I've used them many, many times. They're a great company. They've been around for a long time. And to be honest, I don't even know if they have a competitor. I never really know who else to go out and bid against these guys. They're the only ones that do it, other than a lot of the infrastructure guys, the Banks Construction or Sanders or whatever. They have their own vacuuming equipment, but these guys they're in a class by their own.
Yeah, I would agree.
For whatever it's worth.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. We have Robert on the line with us. And I mean, he is our boots on the ground person, and he deals with them. Robert, anything to add besides this?
Sure. Hi, how is everybody? No, I mean, they're one of the easiest contractors to work with on the island. Their extensive knowledge of the ditches is actually, they know just as much as Donnie does, because Donnie's been here from the beginning with them. So it's very easy to get them to go where you need them. And also the fact is that this is a plan, and we do change it up according to spots that are hot spots and what needs to be done. So yeah, I love them as a contractor.
Robert, I think you know those ditches just as well too now.
Wow.
He does now after what, a year and a half now? Susan?
I'll just add that we've made significant strides in the past few years in I think that this new cycle is really working for us and is helping us in a time, even though we are also facing some new challenges with rising sea levels and other issues. So thank you, Robert and Edie's.
Desiree?
Yes, just one more comment. The original contract had an extension provision in which if both parties were in agreement and the city was satisfied with their work, there was the ability to extend, obviously, with council's approval. So just like any contract, you all have the ability to extend or not extend and cancel. So there is a provision in the existing and the original contract that gives the city the ability to do so. So just for the record.
Thank you. Any final comments before we vote it? Nicole, you want to roll call it, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you. And Robert, thank you for joining us tonight and your help.
You're welcome.
Getting that done. Item E is consideration of recommendation from the Public Safety Committee to implement paid parking on the beach parking areas on Palm Boulevard, 3rd through 9th Avenue and Breach Inlet parking lot between March 1st through October 31st from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. You've got information in your packets. Let's have a motion and a second, and then we'll have some discussion.
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rusty. Second.
Second.
Randy, thank you. Desiree or Ryan, who would like to update or run through this presentation?
Oh, there we go. Either one of us can, I suppose. Desiree, you want to touch base on it, or I can fill in, or?
Or whatever you would like.
Basically, we're moving forward. Is obviously we've had some discussion since pre-COVID. I mean, we started this discussion with trying to get looking into paid parking, trying to improve the infrastructure for parking for folks to utilizing the Palm Boulevard, the rights of ways, and trying to make the beach access more available. Obviously, SCDOT, the county, and other entities are all strapped for cash, and so we're trying to find ways to make those areas more accessible. And it's not only just the rights of ways, but it's the beach access paths that are flooded. Trying to create more handicap accessible beach access paths. And all that comes at a cost. And right now we don't have it. So we're trying to find revenue, a source of revenue to improve beach access. And this is one of the things that we were looking at in order to make that happen.
Thank you, Ryan. Desiree, anything to add to that before we go ahead?
Not much, other than that the recommendation from the committee was to direct staff to develop the changes to the sign plan, develop the amendments to the ordinance, and get an implementation plan in place for implementation in the spring. Currently, our season for enforcement of paid parking out front beach runs from March 1st through October 31st. So part of the recommendation from the committee is to implement paid parking on the existing beach parking areas during that same period. Currently, the times that paid parking is enforced at Front Beach is from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we had quite a bit of discussion at the committee level about whether or not to make the times that paid parking would be enforced at Front Beach and the rights of ways consistent with one another. Ultimately, the committee made a recommendation that the city continues to enforce parking on Front Beach between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and do paid parking on the avenues and on Palm Boulevard between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. So we had some discussion on that. Maybe we can get discussion from the full group before we move forward on, what do we want to do, whether we want to do 8 to 8 across the board, whether we want to do 9 to 6 across the board. We did have a conversation about what the potential revenue loss is to the city in parking revenues at Front Beach if we change from 8 to 8 to 9 to 6. And it's roughly $65,000 that the city would lose if we change the hours at the municipal lots and on the on-street parking between 10th and 14th. We also had provided information to the committee about the potential revenue loss if the city changed the dates from March 1st through October 31st to eliminating 2 weeks in March, 1st of March, and then eliminating the last 2 weeks. And I think that was done as a request or consideration to the Front Beach business owners who, can sometimes struggle to get patrons during the off season. So we also had a conversation about that, but no decisions were made at that time. So I'm looking for some direction from the group before we engage Stantec and engage in, developing the documents that will be presented to you all for final approval. And of course, just moving forward with an implementation plan so we're ready by March 1st, if that is the will of council.
Randy.
Quick question. What are the hours of paid parking operation for the county lot and the months?
Okay, let me see.
Go ahead and get it, Desiree.
It changes. They have different seasons. It's not like us where we have no parking and then paid parking, or free parking and paid parking. I can look. It'll take me a second, Randy.
Yeah. Just to elaborate, Chair Pounds did a nice job of laying out where we get money, where we don't get money. I know the mayor's pet project would be to give the restroom away and let the county have that because it costs a lot of money to operate. He's kind of grinning because it's a long-going conversation. But the reality is our expense levels don't go down. The county is fairly consistent with policy. In my opinion, we should be fairly consistent with the county, particularly since we're not getting any money from the county this year.
Right.
And recognize that if you were to take the planned monies, this is pre-COVID, but the planned monies from the budget and take that impact, we as a community and city have to find alternative revenue sources. And frankly, right now, I don't know where you would get them from. So that's directed as well back to Chair Pounds. But I think we need to be very, very careful in our generosity. It's not to discourage people from coming to the beach, but we have to find a means to pay for what we have.
John and then Susan.
Yeah. And thank you to public safety and staff for putting this together. I'm going to restate the goal slide is nice. I've sort of distilled it into my own. I think there's 3 main goals that I take away from what we're trying to do. The first is related to safety. And I know we've made a number of changes to parking over the last few years as population grows and traffic grows. Obviously, we want to make sure, first and foremost, that fire and police and all other public safety folks can get through expeditiously. And it'd be hard to argue that that's not a top priority. The next is quality of life for folks that live here. And again, it's hard to argue against. There's some threshold of quality of life that has to be there. And I don't care who you are in the county, who you are in Mount Pleasant, you really have to agree that there is some threshold that's unacceptable. And so we could argue about where that threshold lies, but we do want, part of this parking plan is about maintaining a quality of life for people who live here. And the third one is revenue. And that's been kind of the primary topic of discussion today. And I think it's actually probably the one where there's the biggest opportunity for some other potential creative solves. But those to me are the 3 goals. And what I'd like to put out here, and I'll make it in the form of a motion in a second, is actually an incremental approach to paid parking. And my suggestion is going to be in the light of everything that we're facing as a city and within our community, that we rely heavily on our neighbors and the rest of the counties for a lot of services. And so what I'm going to suggest is that we start off with a parking plan that we can add on to, depending on the amount of collaboration we're able to enact and the amount of revenue we're able to generate by working with our neighbors. And so what I'd like to suggest is that we start off with the times mentioned, the dates mentioned, but on weekends only, and allowing the Monday to Friday parking to be maintain that as a free parking for as it is now. And the reason that I think we can do that is I think we can do so and keep our goals intact, that we can still maintain a quality of life. We can still maintain that safety, because outside of the weekends and holidays, the weekdays are not nearly as much of a problem. And I understand obviously that's grown and that's changed, but I think we can all agree the biggest problem are holidays and weekends. So from a safety and quality of life standpoint, I think we're addressing those. On the revenue side, we're going to have to go to our neighbors and we're going to have to get them to chip in. That's all there is to it. And I think, what we've done with CARTA today sends a strong signal. But like it or not, we all live and work together. And there's a couple of recent examples with the school district is a great one. Not the school district, but the school zoning, where, the islands ended up with, frankly, a great option in going to Wando, but not really what was the preferable and better option for our island children in going to the new Lucy Beckham school. And, I'm not saying that if we had a better relationship, we might have ended up there, but I am going to say that if we can build some bridges and establish some better working relationships with our community, issues like that might be things that we can address more creatively with them. The other, of course, is the CARTA issue, where we're going to rely on the rest of the county to really step forward and provide spaces. They can be part of our solution on all 3 of these goals that we have with safety, quality of life, and revenue, if we let them and invite them into it. And I think by implementing and showing them that we're willing to work with them and taking an incremental approach to parking and starting with weekends only and saying we still want to preserve some accessibility that's free for folks who can't afford to pay for parking, who live in our surrounding communities. That's something that we're interested in doing, and we're willing to come to the table. This is how we show we're willing to come to the table. We need you to come join us. And so I'll make that in the form of a motion, I guess, as an amendment, that paid parking is for holidays and weekends during the stated time period and stated hours.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
John, I'll give you my 2 cents real quick. I'd rather see us go the other way and implement fully. And if there's behavior that we, can get to hit some of these parking spots and stuff, we could reduce parking. reduce paid parking to weekends or whatever. Weekends only are not going to give us the revenue side to cover the expenses that Ryan talked about and Desiree hit on. I mean, it's not going to come anywhere close to what we need to help maintain some of that work. So, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and John for your comments. I work out here all day long. I think I was in the Wild Dunes 2 times a day, and Palm Boulevard was lots of parking and lots of slowdowns as I was going. It was not as packed as it is on weekends, but I can't tell you how many times I had to stop going down Palm Boulevard from 21st to 41st. So it is busy.
Susan.
I have a few things to say about parking. First, I totally agree with the vision of using revenue to remake Palm Boulevard in a much more user-friendly way for the sake of everybody who comes out to the beach. Also, I had not given the consideration or thought of what Councilmember Moy presented, but I'm intrigued by that idea. And certainly want to echo his sentiments about the sense of community, not stopping at the connector and really thinking bigger picture when we talk about community, because we're very interconnected, some of us more than others, but we're very interconnected with the greater community. And there's a lot of support going both ways there that should be going on, and we should be having as much collaboration as possible. Outside of just doing a weekends only, if that is not possible, I definitely want to see us creating ways to allow greater access by our greater community so that they're not outpriced from using the beach, and especially during the week. And so I was going to strongly suggest again that we look at hourly rates, not just for a part of the day, but for the entire part of the day that we would be charging as a way of providing flexibility. Certainly when we're talking about Palm Boulevard and the avenues, those are places where we don't want to have an all day mindset, especially because we don't have facilities out there. By that, I mean restrooms, that those should be areas that I think we should be encouraging people to come for shorter periods of time. And so an hourly rate would help with that, as well as an annual pass. If we don't go with something like what Councilmember Moy was saying, I think we definitely need to be thinking flexibility. I'd like to see the times be the same for the lots and the street parking, but would like to see it more of a 9 to 6 or an 8 to 6 period. Our businesses have welcomed the idea of not having parking fees in the lots from 6 to 8. I think they could also benefit from the flexibility of an hourly rate. But those are a few of my thoughts. Flexibility, I think, is key here, and accessibility is also key. So I'm definitely open to what Councilmember Moy suggested for now, though.
Rusty.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, a couple of things. I certainly agree with Councilman Moy in regards to the 3 big issues: safety, quality of life, and revenue. And I agree with Chair in regards to going the opposite direction in regards to the revenue. I think we need the revenue to offset some of the issues that we have. And if we're going to go to parking, and when I say issues that we have, but maintenance of the road, public works, picking up trash, litter, that sort of thing. But parking, I agree with Councilwoman Smith in regards to getting a set time in place. I prefer 9 to 6 for all myself, and I think that gives us a little more flexibility for the businesses down on Front Beach, as they had requested a couple of weeks ago. And it just makes it very consistent there, I think, across the board. But I look back too, if you look at the mission of the managed beach parking plan, the main things that we're looking at doing here is citizens ourselves, reducing hazardous traffic conditions, making sure we have a safe environment for our public safety, people, police, fire, and other emergency response vehicles responding to emergencies, and protecting the residents of the area from unreasonable burdens and gaining access to their residences. We've seen a lot of that over the years, where it's almost impossible to get out of a driveway, for example. And also, preserving the safety of children and other pedestrians and traffic around, particularly Palm Boulevard. I've lived here for years, and I can tell you there's been a lot of near misses. I think anybody that's been up and down Palm Boulevard will tell you that there's many times that families are there, they're unloading things from their car, the parents are, the children are running around, they're excited to be at the beach as they should be, but yet we don't have the type of safety that we need in place there. So we need to manage that more effectively too. So to that extent, I'm in favor of us looking at making some of these changes, but also not just limiting it to weekends. Thanks.
Thank you, Rusty. So right now we're discussing the amendment on the floor around making it only applicable on weekends. John, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'll make this my second and final comment on the matter, which is that in my experience, rolling something back is much more difficult than rolling forward. And once that revenue starts coming in, and once it becomes effectively embedded in our island, it's going to be difficult to call it back. Whereas adding something on would be much easier. So I understand that perspective. I understand we need the revenue. I would say we would need to act with urgency to our neighbors to say, this is coming imminently unless you can help us with overcome some of our revenue challenges.
And we're talking about a March implementation, John. So there's some time here. So other questions or comments on the amendment? Susan.
Can we get some rough estimates on the difference in revenue that we're talking about here? And especially, there was also the discussion of losing $60,000 based on certain timing. It would be good for us to review the big picture and how much we already take in parking revenue in the lots, and also how much we could be taking in if we do half of Palm Boulevard or all of Palm Boulevard next year.
We can certainly develop a report that shows all those options. I don't have all those numbers. I certainly don't have the numbers of the potential revenue if it's only weekend versus, every day. So we can certainly, based on what happens in the direction that we get today, we can definitely pull those numbers up. We do know what the impact would be if the city changed the hours in the lots and on-street parking between 10th and 14th from 8 to 8 to 9 to 6. That would be roughly a $65,000 reduction, and that's using numbers from FY 2019. So,
well, if you just apply 2/7 of what we have in the budget of 500,000, you're talking less than 200,000 revenue compared to what we're budgeting of 500,000.
I mean, I will say, count on share pounds is that number assumes paid parking on both sides of Palm between 21st and 40th, and council already made a motion directing staff to move forward with eliminating one side of Palm. Yep. So we have to redo those estimates as well, just to based on what we have so far and the direction we have so far from council, what the impact would be.
With Jimmy Ward.
We can bring that on next Tuesday.
Sorry,
there's nothing, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to restate what you did. The fiscal year 19 total parking revenues was, I believe it's $508,000. So if you start chopping from 6 to 8 permanently, that's, as Desiree said, that's $65,000. I just think we need to be a little cautious, a little careful about where we cut after we just finish talking about how tight things are going to be for the next couple of years and how much we got going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Great ideas, and we want to take care of our neighbors, but we have to be realistic.
Yeah. Susan.
I do believe you should have at least the amount of parking revenue. Can you restate that we get from the parking lots and street spots currently, roughly?
Yes, give me 1 second.
$508,000.
Yeah, other questions while Desiree's doing some math on the fly?
And my only other comment would be, I guess I would, before we vote on this, want to see more of the financial estimates and impact. So I don't feel quite prepared to vote yay or nay on this.
Well, and Desiree, instead of trying to do this math on the fly, why don't we, would there be acceptability to bring this back to council next week and have some financial analysis around it?
Somebody
I
can,
found it.
Well, I mean, we got more math to do. Ryan, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, Mr. Chair, I was saying the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of questions about, unknowns. So if we could pull that information together before next week, or even before, and I know we're kind of under a timeline, Desiree, with our trying to get this implemented. We have to get this passed in order to get things moving by next year.
Sorry, Ryan.
No, yeah, but it's just if we don't have to take action on this tonight, then I don't have a problem with that. I'm not gonna be butt sore from it, but if we can move forward, yeah.
You can wait a week.
Yeah, Mayor, would you be okay if we added that to the agenda for next week with some financial analysis to it?
Most accepted.
Yes, according to our timeline, we're expecting final approval on the plan, I guess, conceptually by next week. I just, and maybe this is something that I can do offline with some of the comments that have been made individually with council members to make sure that we have a clear picture of what scenarios you won't want to see in terms of the financial impact. So we can work on that internally.
In that case, I will withdraw my amendment.
Nicole, go ahead.
well, the other thing you could do, and Desiree can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you table everything, then it stays like it is. We can bring it right back up with the financial analysis, if you want to do that, so that Councilmember Moy's motion stays on the floor, the original motion stays on the floor. Does that, or we can just withdraw it all. I'm also just offering you another option.
Just withdraw.
You're right.
Oh,
I think we
I kind of like Nicole's, so we don't have to do this again. I mean,
I think I would suggest let's withdraw it all and table it to the city council with some additional financial analysis. Desiree, you good with that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So we're going to withdraw or table? They're two
Withdraw.
different things.
Okay, so
I am withdrawing my amendment.
okay, Councilmember Smith, you're fine with withdrawing that as well?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and then it would be Councilmember Streetman and Councilmember Bell who put the original motion on the floor. You guys cool with the pulling
Yeah.
your? Okay.
Yes.
Philip, I may though, before we do that, just a comment, the parking revenue at the lot, frankly, other than the time changes, is not overly relevant to the discussion on what we do around Palm Boulevard. And I would just suggest that between now and next week, when we discuss this in full, that we look at the math behind the time changes, not the math. Well, there's two issues, one behind both sides of Palm, obviously,
Right.
and the time changes. But I honestly, I don't understand why we're talking about the city parking lot, which we've talked every year. We understand those numbers. Those numbers aren't going to change except for the $65,000 that has already been suggested. If we may, and again, I don't think we need a motion, but I'd like to understand the difference in the time changes, not the difference in the geography.
I think Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think we need to look at them, and we're trying to make it during our committee meeting, Randy, as you know.
Yeah.
We're trying to incorporate it all into one thing, and it really is two different entities. There's two different things going on. I mean, one's a residential, one's commercial district, and trying to develop the parking restrictions for Palm Boulevard should coincide with the residential parking restriction, 9 to 6.
All right, we've got this.
And like I say, that doesn't change anything. I mean, we have to change that in order to make our sign ordinance work, but we can change the commercial district at any time.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, we've got this table till next week. What Kevin,
Wrong.
final comments?
Nope, never mind. Go ahead.
Good.
Jimmy Ward, say it again.
It's withdrawn, not tabled.
Withdraw.
Right.
Well, the reason I asked for that is when we talk about losing $65,000 due to hourly changes in the lots, it's important to put that in perspective of how much money we're taking in overall in the lots, as a percentage of what we would be losing.
Okay. So noted. So Ryan, me, you, Desiree, whoever, we can all get together and put some math on that pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, it won't be a problem. Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you all.
Next.
Item F, consideration of a change order not to exceed $30,000 for the purchase and installation of a flood-resistant door for the public safety building. This would come from our contingency money that we actually haven't used anything yet, which is great. So can I have
approve?
Thank you, Ryan.
Second.
Second, Jimmy Ward, thank you. Desiree, what do you want to add to that?
Well, yes. So we had a lengthy discussion during Public Safety Committee. We had the project manager from Trident come and give us an update on the progress in the building, which we've already talked about during the financial statements and the project worksheet. This was not originally contemplated in the original budget, mainly because of budgetary, just being cautious with our budget and our overall project. But it's something that we would like to see happen and installed in the building, because as you all know, once this building is completed, it will be our headquarters for emergency operations in the event of a hurricane. So the idea is, obviously there's some threshold for when, depending on the intensity of the hurricane, that we all have to evacuate. But if it is under a category 3, we would stay in the building, and we would like to have the functionality of being able to put flood panels on all the doors, but still have the ability for egress and ingress. And this would give us the ability to do that. It's up to $30,000, and we would be, according to Chief Graham, we're working on the exact location, the last conversation we had internally with the team, we indicated that the best location would be the front doors. And they would rather than having to put panels on manually, the doors would serve as the flood prevention system. So again, we haven't used, thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't used any of our contingency, and we're just asking for approval from council on this.
Questions, comments before we vote? Mayor.
Desiree said just the front doors. We're talking about all doors downstairs, right? Flood resistant.
So all doors will have the flood panels, but only the front doors would be actual flood-proof doors.
Okay.
And they would be embedded in the door, if you will.
Thank you for the clarification.
They would all have the flood panels.
We basically, the idea was we developed an emergency operations center that we couldn't get in or out of during a hurricane. So now this basically goes through and allows us to utilize the door system during up to a category 3.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Chief Graham? The category 3? I think I am correct on that, but if I'm not, please correct me.
The building was designed to exceed a category 3, but it's rated as a category 3. And in reference to the rest of the flood doors and panels, we can climb over those, the ones in the hallway and the ones in the police bay. We can easily climb over those if we needed to. Completely different subject than the flood door for the front.
You just need to help yourself.
Any other questions before we vote? Nicole, you want to roll call this one, please?
Sure. Councilmember Buchanan?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Bell?
Aye.
Councilmember Moy?
Aye.
Councilmember Popson?
Aye.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman?
Aye.
Chair Carroll?
Aye.
Chair Pounds?
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item G is just a report. We don't need a vote on this. Report of approved change order in the amount of $20,537 for required seismic bracing on existing sprinkler system at the public safety building, also to be coming out of our contingency. Desiree, you got some detail?
Yeah, well, the team discovered that they were missing in the existing sprinkler system, and this involves in getting bracing on all the existing sprinkler system. Say that 3 times, huh? Sprinkler system and back to the structure. So we really have no option. We have to go through with this. It's something that should have been done in the, the original project. It was found out that we needed to do it. So I just went ahead and approved it. I didn't want to delay the schedule any longer and have them wait until the end of the month when we knew we basically had no option. So I do want council's blessing on it because it goes over the $15,000 threshold that I'm authorized to approve. So I just, I took a chance and did that, but I'm hoping that you all can just bless it and we can move forward.
All right.
Do you want that in the form of a motion?
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by John, second. Randy, thank you. Nicole, roll call real quick.
Absolutely. Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan, Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you. Item H, consideration of the purchase of beach patrol vehicle ATV with plow attachment in an amount not to exceed $20,000. You can see where it's coming from in the budget. So if we'll have a motion and a second, we'll have some conversation.
Motion to approve.
Ryan, thank
Second.
you. Steve, thank you. Desiree or Chief?
Yeah, I'll quickly, before I ask Chief for a little bit more detail, this is included in the budget. And in your packets, you have the additional quotes that we're required to provide for this type of purchase. So Chief, do you want to go ahead and give a little more detail on this purchase, please?
Sure. So most of you know that we had a Bobcat previously. That Bobcat reached the end of life for operation here on Isle of Palms. And what we did find with the Bobcat was that it was a single purpose vehicle, meaning that it could only be used to go out and move sand to fill in the holes. What I'm asking to do is to replace it with an ATV that has a plow that can attach to the front and be removed. By doing that, we take a single purpose vehicle and make it a multi-purpose vehicle so it can be used to patrol the beaches. And when they see a spot that needs to have the hole filled, they can put the plow front on the vehicle, fill it in, take it off, put it in the back, and then continue to patrol the beach. It'll also have handles on the back that would shovels and things like that. Just taking something to make better use out of it. It looks like we might be able to come under budget with that as well.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments? Susan?
That sounds great. I'm curious, can you just run through the vehicles that you use on the beach currently and the numbers that you have?
Yes, ma'am, I can. So we have 4 Star Energy LSVs. And over the year that I've been here, what I've seen is that those vehicles are not able to sustain use on the beach. Those are the electric vehicles. The sand is difficult for the vehicle to maneuver through, using the battery up faster and causing the vehicle to not be able to go very far on the beach. So that would be the purpose in replacing it with the ATV. We have 4 of those right now. Currently, 2 of those are unoperational. One is irreparable, and we sent it to the shop and they basically said it's not worth fixing at all. It would cost more than the vehicle itself is worth. And then the other one is just recently became unoperational as well, or inoperable as well.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Chief, thank you for working that up. Nicole, let's roll call that one.
Sure. Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy, Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Great, thank you. Chief, thank you very much for research and background work on that. Item I, discussion of the 30% of state accommodations tax revenue required for tourism promotion and advertisement currently managed by the Charleston Visitors Bureau. You can see our number in our fiscal 21 budget, about 450,000, obviously direct results of what our A-tax look like. So it's been as high as 600-ish, give or take. In your packet on page 74 of 82, so we are making progress, which is good. Desiree has included the South Carolina code with respect to the allocation of accommodations tax revenue, and it's actually on the second page. You can see there the 30% requirement. So I know this is not a new discussion in councils over the last few years or so, and what I would love to come out of tonight with is a discussion around the topic, but really to direct staff to look at our options, look at alternatives, look at ways we may could take control of that money, use it differently. And there's some parameters within this code section that gives you how you can do that. And I know there's been research done by prior councils to make that happen. So I'll just open it up for discussion at this point. John?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for putting this on the agenda. I've brought this up in a few previous meetings, before, not with this council though. And I'll admit that this is one of the things that most shocked me when I joined council and I saw this number and I saw the output that came from this number from the CVB that renders services to Isle of Palms and for promotions. And in terms of an outcome that I would hope from this, whether we move forward with an independent body as is permitted within the state law, or we'd move forward with the CVB in a completely overhauled relationship, I would be satisfied in either case. But the fact of the matter is, we spend over $500,000 a year with what is essentially a marketing agency with zero discussion of the goals of our city from a promotional standpoint. What is it that we would like to achieve with those dollars, with zero strategic thought or input from our staff or from this governing body, with zero, from what I can see, zero degree of proactive actions in working with the city. And I'll point to everything that we've been dealing with since February and March, whereby our city has been attacked relentlessly without any sort of communications lead coming from our over $500,000 a year marketing agency. And finally, from what I can intel, is zero accountability for how this money is spent, what it goes towards, and frankly, how it serves the Isle of Palms. And so, if I sound harsh and critical, frankly, I'm glad, because I should, because this is an inordinate amount of money. And while it would be great if we could spend it for something else, we would love to spend it for our infrastructure needs. We would love to spend it for helping defray public safety costs. The fact of the matter is, until state law has changed, we have to spend it in this way. And so if we're going to spend this money for promotions with Isle of Palms, I'd like to have somebody in our corner who is actually in our corner and working closely with us to make sure that we're achieving our goals. And so I don't know if we need a motion to direct staff to move forward, but I, for one, would like for the city to move forward with the steps that it will take to introduce an independent commission or chamber or whatever it is. I know, Desiree, you've done some research into what that would look like, but if you need a motion, please let me know, because I'll make it right now, that we move forward. And if that brings the CVB to the table with a different posture and in a manner that absolutely overhauls this relationship, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I think that in the same way that we are sending a message to CARTA and the county, we need to send a message tonight.
Desiree, do we need a motion and a vote on this topic, or can we just direct staff? Would you rather have in the form of a motion?
That the language from the agenda says discussion of the 30% state accommodations tax revenue. Usually when an action is expected, we add the word consideration just to give public notice that council may take action on it. So I would, I'm a little hesitant on just having an action from council. We can certainly have this discussion again at city council and put it on the agenda as an actionable item to just make it clear and transparent that way. And I would also suggest maybe bringing or asking to come to the table to the CVB, if that is what the group would like to do, to just have a presentation and a conversation with them about, you know, how they measure their success and the use of the funds that the city is required and has chosen to provide to them for tourism promotion. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, Jimmy Ward.
Everything's cyclical. This has been brought up over the past 30 years, many times. And we've always run into a dead end because it's the logistics and all of the hammering out of the details. You'd have to set up an office. For my recollection of our experience in the past, setting up an office, setting up your own marketing firm, you have to have, John's talking about accountability. We would have to have accountability to state to see where those funds were going. Although I agree with him, I think it's a total waste of money. They used to heavily invest in Spoleto, and we told them year after year after year that before this year, we're packed during Spoleto, and we did not. People were not coming to Isle of Palms to go to Spoleto for the most part. Most of those people were staying downtown, and I agree. It seems like an awful lot of money, but it is state law. But I'm just saying, look for a long row to hoe if you decide to tackle this, because we looked at it every few years and sometimes in more detail than not. So it's not a new topic.
Nope, no, that's what I said. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Jimmy Ward's right. We've talked about this many times. And John, thank you for bringing it up again tonight. When you look at the CVB, you look at the brochures and stuff, and you look at the communities, I see more Charleston, I see more Kiowa Island, I see an equal amount of Sullivan's Island as I do Isle of Palms, and they give probably less than $20,000 a year. You know, I think we can better pinpoint the direction we want to go for like off-season events and stuff like that. But we're right, we do have to have, if I'm not mistaken, a standalone within the city, but I think Folly Beach has their own standalone CVB, for the lack of a better term. Is that correct, Desiree?
They have, and I guess this is the research that I'm being directed to do, but just from my conversations informally on this topic, it looks like the Folly Beach put together like an advisory group, very similar to our ATAC board, and they contract with the CVB and I believe another marketing agency to do the tourism promotion and the marketing as it's required by state law. So I think that there are various ways that it has been done. So we'll look into what all those options and all those avenues are and present those to the group. But I think there are multiple ways that I guess it could be done. Would have to figure out, you know, what they are and what the best alternative for the city is, if that's the will.
Randy. Oh.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I agree with Councilmember Moy 100%. No metrics, I just have a suggestion. Before we bring the CVB in for a presentation, which we all kind of know what that would look like, I'd rather we have the discussion about our expectations, what we would expect from metrics, and work with the city administration on that. I don't want to have to bring a sleeping bag to the next meeting because of presentations when we're not clear on our objectives. But if the gauge of marketing support, and I've run quite a few of those, we would have a failed agency right now. I mean, we've been hammered and we've had no response. And frankly, as a community, I think we've done a great job of dealing with some extraordinarily difficult times, yet, you know, all of our marketing support appears to be leaving us the victim. So John, thank you for the comments. I actually agree 100%.
Mayor, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, that's all right. It doesn't mean that the CVB won't get a little bit of money from us. It's just that I think we can better direct the bulk of it to best suit Isle of Palms. Thank you.
I think you're right, Mayor. Yeah, thank you. Susan.
So I'm the new appointee to go to the CVB meetings, and I had hoped to kind of look at this more strongly this year. It's been a weird year, though, for them. They have certainly taken some huge hits in their own funding and have reduced staff and that kind of thing. I do think that it is worthwhile to have this bigger picture conversation, and I think that maybe we would be a good conversation for us. It's with strategic planning this fall, for us to really see how we want to position ourselves with marketing as the Isle of Palms, not as a piece of the Charleston area, which I do think that there is some, that what the CVB does, just my gut tells me, or what I've seen, it seems downtown centric to some degree, with potentially us is important, but not as catered to. That said, they were working on a campaign for us that I thought, but then it kind of did. Desiree, could you chime in? Because I have been curious as to what happened with this marketing campaign that they were doing for Isle of Palms, and where that went.
Just a quick note, if I may, Chair. Just a quick footnote on what Desiree is going to say, which is they didn't come to us and say, we think you should do a marketing plan. We staff went to them. So that actually, to me, is a further evidence of what we need here. You need, when you pay $500,000 plus a year to an agency, they need to be thinking about this well in advance of you, because communications is their job.
Desiree.
Yeah, just a quick update. Yes, when the city and the town of Sullivan's Island passed both the plastics ban and the smoking ban ordinance, I reached out to the CVB in an effort to develop jointly with Sullivan's Island a marketing and education campaign, like we had talked about. And they quickly responded, and we had multiple meetings, and they developed a really neat plan for implementation this year. Actually, we had a plan of having a kickoff beach cleanup that would be advertised around the Tri-County area. And obviously COVID happened, so that was put on that was paused temporarily, just as we try to get through this spring and summer. So it's definitely something that's it's still in the pipeline in terms of a timing perspective. I'm not sure where we are on that just yet. We haven't had a follow-up meeting after our last one, right in the middle of the pandemic. But yeah, that's something that we've been working with them and the town of Sullivan's on as well.
So Mayor, if you're okay, again, adding to your agenda for next week, we could put this on as an action item or an actionable item for next council meeting, if you would be okay with that.
Just remember, when we take our estimates of time, we're all adding to it.
I know.
So don't blame the mayor.
Point him back to this meeting, Mayor. I hear you. So Desiree, I think and again, all we're looking for next week is to direct staff to look at options and alternatives, right?
Yes, I think so. I think that's how Councilmember Moy articulated that request.
Okay.
Or what it would take, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good conversation. Thank you. Our last action item, consideration of recommendation from the Planning Commission for the use of the city's tree fund to improve and beautify areas adjacent to any docks that may be designated for use by the residents at the IOP Marina. You may remember we charged the Planning Commission to come up with recommendations around the tree fund and the use of that. I know Douglas is on. Desiree, do you want to provide any commentary before we motion and second this, or let Douglas, your call?
Yeah, I'll let Douglas sort of chime in. He was in the meeting with the Planning Commission. I think he'd be better to convey what the discussion and the decision was from that group.
Okay, and there's a memo from Douglas, sorry, Douglas, in the last item in the package, if you haven't seen that already. Sorry, Douglas, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Philip. The memo does kind of say it all. The Planning Commission looked at the issue at 2 of their meetings, and they kind of talked pretty far afield about what could be done with that money and different uses that it could be put towards. I think ultimately when they talked about how much money it was how much it was growing annually, that fund, that point partnered with their feeling that there was a lot of opportunity for beautification. I think that kind of settled them on the idea that the code as it's currently written is probably a good balance of the way they felt it should be administered, whereby, when a tree gets removed and the community has the loss of that tree, that it would be nice to offset it with some kind of beautification. And, there was a little bit of talk about how to do that privately. And I think ultimately they felt like there was so much that could be done publicly that there wasn't a need for that at this point, that it could get to that stage. I would also just add that they were very excited about, the idea of them coming up with ideas. I feel like council has so much that you all deal with, that maybe it would be a good opportunity for them just occasionally to kind of look at the balances, look at the needs at the time, and just maybe annually come up with a recommendation. Because they quite enjoyed, I think, looking at it and coming up with the suggestion of what they did, of if Marina docks came available that could be used by the residents, that they felt like that would be a great use of that money.
Thank you, Douglas. Susan.
So thank you, Douglas, and thanks to the Planning Commission. I think this is fantastic that they were able to work on this for us, and I'm the one who suggested it. I didn't want to see that tree money just sitting there, and especially at a point since it was restricted and we can't use it for other things. And I like the idea of having it at the marina. I don't know about the language of restricting it specifically to being close to docks that are used by residents, whether that's necessary, if we can just, deem it as being used for beautification of the marina as approved by city council. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Piggybacking on what Susan just said, it's like our parking lots down at Front Beach. Big, empty, wide lots. And some trees interspersed around there, coordinated with the lanes of parking. I mean, it could really be a good looking parking lot and more attractive to attract businesses or business to Front Beach. And there's also a lot of residents who are willing to buy a tree and put their name on it, like we did along the avenue down there. So again, I think the more that we can beautify Isle Palms, the better. Not only at the marina, but city-owned property.
Do we need to make a motion? Was a motion made?
No, it has not been. We were just hopping into discussion, but give it a shot if you would like to, Susan.
I mean, I would make a motion that we use the money currently in the tree fund of about $100,000. Is that correct? Towards beautification of the marina, period.
Is there a second? Let's get a second to that.
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you, Ryan. Go ahead.
Perfect. There's a motion to spend $100,000. Do we have a plan to spend that $100,000, or is it just we're going to take that $100,000 and spend it?
Well, good point. Or do we need to take action in this moment?
No, I don't think so. I think the best thing to do is look at. We obviously need to look at the whole project and see where trees can go. And I totally agree. We need to beautify, and this is the beginning of what we should be able to be doing down there.
Yeah.
But just to take the balance of the entire tree fund and put it into the marina without a plan, it doesn't make sense to me. But I think what we need to do is either get with our partners down there, the restaurants, the marina manager, and all those entities involved, and figure out what needs to go into it, because it may not be all of it. And so I totally agree with you, Susan, that something like that is a feasible project. I just don't know if it's $100,000 worth of it to go into it.
Douglas, I thought the planning commission was 50,000. Was there not an amount?
Yeah, well, so I will admit that when they talked about the balance of that fund, I incorrectly said that I thought it was about 50,000.
Gotcha.
So their discussions all centered around that amount, and I subsequently found out that the balance, I think Debbie said it was 113,000. So I would take their comments to mean, or their understanding was spend around $50,000. I also think that they, just for clarity, I think they understood that it was not crystal clear what was going to happen with the marina here in the next 6 months. And I agree that it probably would be prudent to just see what happens. I mean, I think they kind of had ideas that space could come available, and I don't know that that's settled. So I think the idea of just sitting tight for the time being, seeing what happens, seeing what the needs are down there. I think they really focused on, should we change the code at this point? And I think they felt clearly that that was not needed at this point.
Yeah, and Ryan, sorry, Douglas, go ahead. Sorry about that. Ryan, I totally agree with you. And I think all we're saying tonight is we would essentially designate some of that money in the tree fund to be used for the marina and maybe other places. But tonight, there's no plan to spend it. Just it's available when we get to that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just withdraw my motion. I think, and we can, as we make more of a plan for the marina, I agree that it's probably better to hold off on really. I mean, would you agree, Chair Pounds, just to withdraw?
Let's see, Desiree, I mean, we've got this out as a consideration using your key words as we like to in this. So should we go ahead and designate some of that money for marina beautification once we get to that point, or what's your point?
That's certainly up to you all. You could, make a motion to identify funds to, whenever a plan is developed, to use funds from the tree fund to that end. Not certainly necessary, as we don't have a plan yet.
Right.
So
withdraw. I think I think that Ryan made several good points, and I'd just like to withdraw the motion.
Okay. Kevin.
I was just going to say, we don't have a plan. We don't know the area we're going to plant, and how to designate, the amount of money when we don't have anything is kind of hard to do.
Mayor.
I was withdrawing my second.
Thank you.
One more thing, I guess it makes council and the community aware that these are funds that the city has that need to be used for beautification. And I think it sends, at least you all received the message from the Planning Commission that they want a focus on the marina, whether it's, part of their motion to be used adjacent to any docks, or, the marina property in general. I guess that sends the message that they would like council to focus on that property for beautification. Douglas, would that be a true characterization of the message that the motion is trying to send to council?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Desiree. All right. Just hit miscellaneous business real quick, and then we'll come back to item K. Our next meeting is Tuesday, September 15th at 6 o'clock. Our last item on the agenda is K, discussion and consideration of marina restaurant lease proposal from the IOP Families Investment Group. We have a draft of the lease. I know we'll need to go into executive session, but Desiree, anything while we're in a public session right now, just from an update standpoint for residents?
So last month, council approved the city engaging some real estate attorneys, Hainsworth, Sinclair, and Boyd, to draft the lease of the Marina restaurant. That lease document has not yet been shared with the tenants before you all having a chance to discuss it. And that lease document, according to the code and the Freedom of Information Act, would remain protected, I guess, from public distribution until that is agreed upon. And that is just beneficial for any contractual negotiation between different parties. So the purpose of this executive session is going through some of the sections in that lease document that we need some clarity and the attorneys need some clarity on from council on. After that, we're going to make those changes to the document and then distribute to the other parties. And hopefully we can get that done by Friday. Because I know that this is something that it's a priority for all of us, and we certainly want to see wrap up. So we're heading in a good direction, and it contains all the items that both parties have agreed to up until now, and we're just putting it in a document that we feel comfortable, and we'll send it out. So that's the purpose of this executive session.
All right, so this Friday is the goal to turn this document to the other parties.
Correct.
Perfect. So we need to go into executive session in accordance with section 30-4-70 of the Freedom of Information Act for discussion of contractual negotiations related to the Marina restaurant lease proposal and receive legal advice. Upon returning to open session, the committee may take action on matters discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And Ryan, second. You good?
Yes.
All right. Very good.
Quickly, Councilman Chair Pounds, Ron sent a separate Zoom meeting link. I will ask him here to just resend it. I think some of you it may be buried in your inbox, but we'll just go ahead and resend. But if the public wants to stay in this live stream, we'll come back after it.
Nicole, do we need to vote on going to executive session? We had a motion and a second.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to roll call it, please, real quick?
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Everybody needs to turn themselves on. I got it. Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor? You guys are off record at 8:17.
Thank you. So call into the other number on for executive session. Thank you.
Hey, Ron. Hey, Jimmy. You need to leave this meeting and then log into the other link that Ron sent earlier. There you go.
Desiree, we got quorum. We're ready to come back. All right, we are back from executive session. It is 8:47. No decisions were made during executive session, and that concludes our meeting. Desiree, any final comments? Good to go. Can I have a motion to it?
A lot of progress.
Yeah, a lot of progress. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Two.
Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree.
Thank you, Chair.
Good work.